Hello, and welcome to Permission to be Creative, a short talk to remind you that you are creative every single day. My name is Claire, and I am a facilitator and coach, and I have a particular interest in creativity and using writing in a creative way to come up with ideas. But whether writing is your thing or not, this talk is still for you. So why do I care whether or not you feel creative? I think it leads to a more fun and satisfying life if we can embrace our creativity, recognize and acknowledge it. I grew up thinking that because I wasn't academic, that I had nothing to offer. But thankfully, I eventually learned that that was not true. Um, so it's about sort of celebrating creativity in all its forms. And also because most of the people I work with, from sort of people who just journal right through to people who have published novels, most people wouldn't call themselves creative. It's sort of for other people. And it feels sort of big-headed or something to say, yes, I'm creative, or whatever. You can only say I'm creative if you're a creative. So why is it important to have a more creative mindset? It means that you're more open to possibilities, you can have more fun, you can be more imaginative and flexible in your thinking, being more curious and feeling confident and having the courage to go forward and do the things that you want to do in life, whatever they may be. So we're going to look at creativity, break it down a little bit, and then talk about permission. So first of all, who gets to be creative? If you want a minute to think about this, pause the video, so I will continue. So most people will come up with things like advertising executives or designers, graphic designers, painters, decorators, writers, all manner of people that tend to be just in this art, what I call the arty sort of side of creativity. And that's why most people don't own their creativity, I think, because we think it's just about being arty. But it isn't. Creativity is also about solutions and solving problems and coming up with ideas. And that's what we're going to be focusing on for the next 20 minutes or so, is this idea of solutions and ideas to solve problems. So what's a creative idea? First of all, most definitions will say pretty much the same thing. A creative idea is new and it works, which is pretty basic. But there's a lot of subjectivity in this. Just because it's new and because it works doesn't mean it's good. And you can judge for yourself based on, oh, you can't quite see that one, sorry. You can judge for yourself based on some of these perhaps less less enticing ideas, but you may think they're fantastic. I think this is great, and my friend's baby actually invented this long before I saw this, but by putting her hand on a sponge as she was crawling around the kitchen. So I'm sure somebody just, that was an extension of that idea. So anyway, it's subjective whether you think it's good or not. So it doesn't mean it's good just because it's new and it works. Also, it works is going to be very personal to you, whether something that works for millions of people still might not work for you, and something that is perfect for you may not work for somebody else. So that's also a little bit subjective. And then this idea of new is even can come into question. So smartwatches were new at some point. They were very creative and innovative and are very successful. Almost everybody has one. But actually, the idea of watches and clocks dates right back to the 1500 BC when sundials were first invented, right through to the first clocks, timers, watches, etc. And then in the 80s and 90s, along came laptops. So it's just a laptop on a watch strap, really, isn't it? A smartwatch. I mean, it's slightly, just slightly discrediting it, but basically, it's two ideas brought together, which is a lot of what creativity is. And James Bond probably also along the way had some gadgets that did things from a watch, I'm sure. So there's a model which has 4 C's, but the main two are big C and little c. There's this sort of model of creativity, if you like. And big C creativity would be things like the smartwatch, big inventions that everybody knows about. They're very successful and innovative. And then you've got small c creativity, which is, little c, which would be, things like your equivalent version, something in your shed that you've made to solve a particular problem, or in your kitchen or wherever. But also those daily decisions you're making, those daily choices you're making to create your life. It's all part of that creative mix. And I'm just going to share with you this quote by Jeff Morsey, who co-wrote the book Creativity Inc. And he said, we tend to look at what I call big C creativity, like, have we invented the new G4 Apple computer lately? Or are we knocking the socks off our competitors in the market with something new and exciting? Everybody's looking for the big breakthrough. Meanwhile, they're going about their lives, making up each day as they go along, as the market shifts, as the office environment shifts, as the politics in the office shifts. And they're applying little c creativity all the time, but they look at this big C breakthrough and think, I've never done that, I'm not very creative, and they lose heart. Instead, if people can learn to focus on the small stuff, they'll recognize themselves as creative beings and creativity as being part of everything. And yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. And whatever your role, whether you're working in business in this way or not, the same applies to all of us. So how do we have ideas? So there's these, I've broken this down into very technical thinky and non-thinky. So the thinky stuff is the making connections. So like with the smartwatch, bringing those two ideas together. And then there's also spotting and breaking patterns, which is also another very common way that new ideas are come up with. And then there is the more getting different perspectives, which is less thinky, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So first of all, making connections. So a really good example of this, this lady, Marion Donovan, who in the 40s had a baby. She was an inventor already, and her baby, the nappies were still just material at that stage, and she had her baby and was fed up with leaky nappies. So she decided to create a waterproof nappy, and she ended up just sticking her shower curtain onto a nappy and created the first waterproof nappy. She then went on to invent the first disposable nappies. But so again, just two ideas being brought together to make something new. My friend Chris, his hob indicators had worn out, as they do, and so he connected his Lego pieces to make new indicators for the hob and came up with his own creative solution. Then there is spotting and breaking patterns. And this guy, Garrett Morgan, in the 20s, he was also an inventor and involved in developing traffic lights. And at that stage, there was only red and green, stop and go. He then saw a nasty traffic accident and realized that there needed to be something that showed people that there was going to be that they were going to need to stop. So he broke the pattern of red and green, and he created what was then known as the yield light, the amber light. So yeah, he just broke that pattern. And again, my friend Chris, on his wall are these game consoles. I assumed that they were sort of historic and that it was like a little console museum, but they are all working, and he just takes one off the wall. They're sort of stuck on with Velcro, I guess. So he's broken two patterns there. He's broken the pattern of art is just for looking at, and the pattern of useful things sort of get stored away, which is where they would normally be. So there's a double whammy there. So and then there's the more non-thinky stuff. So this is using our imagination a bit more and getting different perspectives. And I like to use an approach I've developed called right thinking, which uses creative writing and journaling exercises to get people to surface new insights and perspectives. And so in creating this presentation, when I started, it was full of words, as they are. And I was trying to think how to make it a bit more creative and a bit lighter and a bit more fun. And so I got my presentation to write to me and tell me what it would like me to do. And my presentation said it would like to just be made up of images. And I thought, oh, that's a lovely idea. I'd never have thought of that. And lo and behold, that's what I did. And actually, if anybody is watching this who has to make presentations, I really recommend it. It really helps you to remember things better. I haven't had to look at any notes doing this presentation at all. The images really hold it for me. And also, I'm really hoping it's more interesting for you to look at rather than a load of words that I'm going to be reading out. So that was my presentation, gave me the idea for the all image, apart from the Jeff Morsey quote. Presentation. So there's different ways to do it, and I'm sure there are more. So how do we go about having ideas? So whether it's a goal or a problem, the elephant's in our room, we get to work on something. We start intentionally thinking about it and working on it. And then in the background, whatever you believe in will determine how you would describe what goes on in the background. Is it just your subconscious? Some people refer to it as their inner Google. I like that. Some people are spiritual and may believe that sort of ideas are sent to them. Some people may believe in, you may believe in Jung's collective consciousness. I mean, there's all kinds of things, and I'm not dismissing any of them, but whatever you believe is going on in the background, something is going on in the background when you start thinking about solving a problem. And what happens next is that you will either have an idea now straight away, you'll kind of go, oh yeah, there's my solution, lovely, thank you very much, or some time and space will go by and you will have an idea that will come later. And that space is quite a challenge and can make people feel that they're blocked, can make people feel like they can't find a solution. A bit like when you are trying to remember somebody's name or trying to remember a piece of information, it just won't come to you. And yet, 2 days later, you'll be doing something completely different and it will pop into your head. It's a similar idea. And your brain needs this space to work and to make connections and come up with ideas. And people like Einstein and Darwin had many projects over many years, not just the ones that they're famous for, that they worked on over long periods of time, and they'd go from one to the next and then stop one and go to something else, and giving that space and time to allow things to percolate and process. So I'd say trust in that space and allow that space. But anyway, so yeah, that's how it works. You either you come up with something now or you come up with it later. And that's how it works for everybody, whether you're Einstein or Darwin or whether you're my friend Chris and trying to fix his hob. And actually, this idea of later, I went to bed having written most of a blog, and I woke up and it had my subconscious, my inner Google had written another paragraph, which has never happened before or since, unfortunately. Yeah, I woke up and it was pretty much fully formed. My brain had literally carried on writing. So yeah, we need to give it space, our poor old brains, to do that work. So how are you creative every day? So we're going to do a quick bingo type take a moment to have a look at some examples of creativity. So just take a minute to have a look at these and see if you can fill a line or in any direction, it doesn't matter, or the whole thing. I'll just talk through a couple of these whilst you look through. So my friend's son and fiance made up this game on their lockdown walk, which had got quite boring. So they came up with stick or slug, which I can imagine you probably can already work out how that worked. Who hasn't used a toilet roll to make something? My last toilet roll, and I have used them for a few things, was to make a sort of breakwater for behind my wardrobe where the back had sort of come away. It looked awful, but that doesn't particularly bother me. My friend Jason would disagree, but anyway. So yeah, I stuck a load of toilet rolls together and then stuck them into the gap, basically, as a short-term measure to fix that. So that was something new that I hadn't done before that was motivated by a problem. And then Ken Robinson, who wrote, sadly is no longer with us, and he wrote a lot about education and creativity. And he said in one of his books, you know, changing our mind is the most profound act of creativity. And, you know, you can change your mind, you can change your life every day, every moment. Which is an amazing act of creativity. So I'm sure you will all have loads of you'll all be shouting bingo as I'm talking, I'm quite sure. And it was very hard to think of things to put in here because there's so many things, and hopefully this list will be making you think of other ways in which you have been creative. So why is it important? Why is it, apart from having a more fun, satisfied, happy life, which is what motivates me to give this talk and to help people to do the things they want to do, why is it important? So in the business world, whether you're an employee or have your own business or whatever your situation, LinkedIn and the World Economic Forum did studies in 2020. And LinkedIn study said that creativity was the most important skill needed in businesses, and the World Economic Forum focused on skills that would be needed in business in 2025. And the top 5 here, apart from the second one, pretty much are all to do with creativity. So imagine if you put that on your CV and talked about it in an overt way, you know, it could set you aside from your competitors, whatever your role, because we need creative thinking in everything. So ideas that stick. Basically, I've had a lot more fun. Life has become a lot more fun for me since I've realized that actually everything around me, when I look at pictures on the wall, the house I live in, the clock that's ticking next to me, you know, the glasses that are holding my drink, all these things are ideas that stuck. That's how I like to look at it. There were probably other ideas for all sorts of things that we surround our lives, you know, and fill our lives with. And for whatever reason, those things stuck at the time. Some of them still are useful, some of them perhaps outdated. And when you start to sort of look at it that way and unpick it a bit, I think it can be more fun to think, actually, how would I get people from A to B in this situation, or whatever it may be? And I quite like to reverse engineer things that sort of catch my eye and think, how did somebody come up with that? And what would I do differently? I'm not a great one for inventions, to be honest, so I tend to sort of unpick it, and that satisfies me normally, but it's quite a fun thing to do. So yeah, it can open your mind up and open your world up to have a bit more fun when you can see the world like that. Oops, sorry, I just whizzed ahead. So how can you practice building your confidence around creativity? So first of all, there are tools. There are lots of books about creativity and how to learn the skills. Most famously, at least from my life experience, is Edward de Bono. He's written lots of books on creativity and how to have creative ideas and all manner of things. And he was a great proponent in that you can learn creativity as it is a skill, and you can learn it and practice it and get better at it. And I would wholeheartedly agree with that. But there are loads of books out there, and yeah, you can learn them quite easily. You can be more curious in how that works for you. For me, it's, you know, that reverse engineering and sort of thinking about how things work and what led people to come up with that idea. Be more open, and it's the same thing. It's just sort of be more open to, you know, that isn't a definite. It isn't written just because something exists. It isn't sort of written somewhere and can't be challenged. Trust that you've got something to offer. We've all got something to offer around creativity and just in general, and we really do. And we just need to trust that our contribution is as valuable as the next person's contribution, even if it helps somebody to come up with a better idea, and not that we come up with it ourselves. Wonder more, look out the window and wonder. How often do you do? When was the last time you wandered? I thoroughly recommend it, and you can't beat a train journey for a good wander, because you can't really do that much else. Capture your creativity. You know, after listening to this talk, maybe just write down all the things you can think of that you've ever done as that have been creative. Even putting an outfit together is creative. Yeah, and if you run team meetings, for example, you could have a section at the beginning of your meeting to focus on how you've been creative this week, and just build up that reference in your mind that actually it's not just arty stuff, it is day-to-day stuff that your creativity lives through. So yeah, and then just a few tips, reminders really, that allow that space. Don't be disheartened by that space. It's natural and it needs to happen, and yeah, it needs to be there. Collaboration, the more people involved, the better, basically, which isn't really rocket science. We know this. The more ideas there are in a room, the more ideas people will come up with and give each other new ideas, and so it goes. Be more playful, try and hold it all a bit more lightly, and approach things in a lighter way, and be bored. Let yourself be bored. J.K. Rowling is amongst many people who have talked about the power of boredom, and how it led her to create Harry Potter, sitting waiting for a train. So whose permission do you need to be creative? Again, you can pause here if you want to think about it for a minute, but most people, when I ask them this question, either in a group or one-to-one, will almost immediately kind of go, oh, actually mine. And the reason they're surprised is because they haven't thought about it. And I hadn't thought about it. I went to Liz Gilbert's Big Magic workshop based on her book of the same name, which is about creativity. And she invited us at the end to give ourselves permission, which is what I'm going to invite you to do. And it might sound a bit trite, it might sound a bit woo-woo even, but I promise you it's a powerful thing to do. I've done this for various things, actually, not necessarily to do with creativity, but just setting that intention, writing it down in words and making it real can be really powerful. So I really recommend you do it. So I'm going to give you a suggestion of some words to use. You can write it however you want to be honest. But if you want to use these words, then go ahead and make a note of them. And just write yourself, maybe time yourself for 5 minutes, and let your pen sort of flow. Don't overthink it too much. Just see what comes when you're thinking about how you're creative and why you should be able to be, and keep that somewhere, and hopefully it will fill you with a bit of inspiration and confidence to tackle that new project, or to learn something new, or to start your own business, or to start a new project, whatever it is, however big or small, it doesn't matter. But I hope that you feel a bit more confident to tackle something that you might have felt less confident about before. So thank you for virtually coming along to listen to this talk. I really hope it was useful for you and thought-provoking. If you'd like to hear more, obviously go to my website or give me a shout at my email address there. And I have lots of workshops coming up, and you can find more details on the website, as well as coaching. So thank you so much for coming, and yeah, I hope it was enjoyable for you.